Welcome to the third module of our series, where we will explore how to actually earn money from the share market. Broadly speaking, there are two main avenues for investors to make a profit: the primary market and the secondary market. Today, we are going to focus our attention heavily on the primary market and how it operates. In the primary market, investors generate income primarily by applying for IPOs and FPOs. While you might not hear about FPOs every single day, IPOs are incredibly popular and widely discussed. Participating in this market is an excellent starting point for new investors because it offers a highly accessible way to enter the financial ecosystem. One of the most attractive features of applying for an IPO is that it carries virtually zero risk. Why? Because the process is entirely luck-based. You apply for the shares, and if you are lucky enough to be allotted, great. If not, your exact investment amount is safely refunded directly back into your bank account. Let us break down exactly what an initial public offering, or IPO, actually is. In the simplest terms, it is the formal process where a private company, which is currently owned by a limited number of members, offers its shares to the general public for the very first time to become a publicly listed company. You might wonder why a financially strong, successful private company would want to share its ownership. Usually, these companies are performing very well, but they need to raise significant funds. They might want to expand their current operations, launch ambitious new projects, or even pay off existing large loans to improve their balance sheets. Imagine that you and 3 friends start a company together. Your business is booming, revenue is excellent, and the model is highly scalable. However, to take it to the next massive level, you lack the necessary capital. So, you decide to issue an IPO, exchanging a portion of your ownership with the public in return for the funds needed to grow. Issuing an IPO is not as simple as just asking for money. There are strict rules. Step 1 involves the company deciding to issue the IPO and preparing a draft red herring prospectus, or DRHP. Step 2 requires the company to appoint an issue manager or a merchant banker who will professionally handle the entire IPO process on their behalf. Moving to Step 3, the company submits the DRHP, which includes financial reports, business plans, risks, assets, and liabilities, to CBON, the Securities Board of Nepal. In Step 4, CBON meticulously reviews these documents. If the company meets all the necessary capital and regulatory eligibility criteria, CBON grants the official permission to proceed. Once CBON approves the IPO, we reach Step 5, the public notice. Announcements are published in newspapers and on financial websites like Maro Lagani. Investors can also follow updates on social media pages such as Humro Share Market, Stock Nepal, or Share Sanskar to stay informed about upcoming IPO and FPO opportunities. Before the general public gets a chance, the shares are actually divided up. Companies reserve specific portions of the IPO for certain groups. For instance, 5 to 10% is typically reserved for Nepalese citizens working abroad in foreign employment. Other portions are set aside for local residents of the project area and the company's own employees. Now that we understand the background, how do you actually apply? You absolutely must have 4 things ready: a standard bank account, a DMAT account, a MeroShare account, and a CRN number. Once you have these set up, you will need to head over to your App Store to download the MeroShare application to prepare for the next steps. Moving right along to the actual application process, an investor must have 4 mandatory components ready before applying for an initial public offering. These include a standard bank account, a DMAT account to hold the shares, a MeroShare account for the online portal, and a CRN number provided by the bank. Without all 4, the process cannot even begin. The MeroShare platform is where the actual application happens. Investors can download the dedicated mobile app from the App Store or Play Store, or simply log in directly through the official website using the specific username and password credentials sent via email by their respective banks. Once successfully logged into the MeroShare portal, the user is greeted by the main dashboard interface. To find available stock offerings, the investor must navigate directly to the My ASPA section. This specific area is the secure gateway for all primary market activities, ensuring funds are safely blocked in the bank rather than transferred immediately. Under the Apply for Issue tab within this section, a comprehensive list of all currently open offerings appears. This includes standard IPOs, right shares, and FPOs. The investor simply locates the desired company offering ordinary shares and clicks the corresponding Apply button to initiate the form. Before committing any funds, it is absolutely crucial to review the issue details presented on the screen. This page displays the total number of units being issued to the general public, the open and close dates for the application window, and the per unit price, which traditionally sits at a face value of 100 rupees. The details page also explicitly specifies the minimum and maximum quantity an investor is allowed to apply for. Currently, the standard minimum application requires at least 10 units, though it is always wise to double-check these parameters as regulatory rules and minimum requirements can occasionally shift over time. Filling out the actual application form is a highly automated process. On mobile devices, the linked bank is selected automatically. The investor types in the desired number of shares, such as 10, and the total amount calculates itself. The final crucial step here is entering the unique CRN number and checking the mandatory disclaimer box. Seriously, after hitting the Proceed button, the system will prompt the user for a transaction PIN. This is the secure 4-digit code that was set up during the initial MeroShare login process. Entering this PIN confirms the application, effectively blocking the required funds in the investor's linked bank account. While a standard face value is 100 rupees, investors must be acutely aware of premium pricing. Some established companies add a premium to the base value, meaning a single share might cost 300, 400, or even 500 rupees. This higher entry price naturally carries a significantly higher risk profile. Because of this elevated financial risk, premium IPOs require thorough fundamental research before investing. Investors should never blindly apply just because an offering is available. Analyzing the company's financial health, past performance, and the underlying justification for the premium price is an absolute necessity. When applying for the minimum 10 units at the standard 100 rupees, an investor needs exactly 1,000 rupees. However, it is highly recommended to keep an extra 10 to 20 rupees in the linked bank account. This small buffer covers the ASBA charge that most banks automatically deduct for processing the application. In today's market environment, almost every IPO is heavily oversubscribed. For instance, if a company issues 2 million shares, there might be applications for 10 million. Because demand vastly exceeds supply, the final allotment is determined purely by a computerized lottery system. If an investor is not selected, their blocked funds are simply released back to them. A few days after the allotment process concludes, the company officially lists on the Nepal Stock Exchange, or NEPSE. At this point, the formerly private entity transitions into a fully tradable public company. If the company boasts strong fundamentals and a high book value, its secondary market price can soar significantly upon its initial listing. Strategic, determining the exact moment to sell these allotted shares is largely up to the individual investor's personal strategy. However, a common technical indicator to watch is the supply volume. When massive supply enters the market and the price action begins to drop, it often signals a strategic exit point to lock in profits. This natural progression of a company's financial life cycle brings us directly to the concept of a follow-on public offering, or FPO. Unlike an IPO, an FPO is issued exclusively by companies that are already listed on the public exchange. They utilize this specific mechanism when they need to raise additional capital for business expansion or to fund entirely new projects down the line. Let us move straight into the concept of follow-on public offerings, commonly known as FPOs. Unlike an IPO, an FPO can only be issued by a company that is already publicly listed on the stock exchange. Why would a company do this? Usually after their initial offering, they might find themselves needing more capital. This could be for expanding their current business operations, funding entirely new projects, or even paying down existing corporate debt. So they return to the public market to raise those necessary funds. To understand this better, let us look at a hypothetical example. Imagine a company named Himalaya Power Limited. Suppose they launched their IPO 3 years ago at 100 rupees per share, and they are currently actively trading on the NEPSE. Now they decide they need to raise more funds. If they already have 1 crore, or 10 million, existing shares in the market, they might decide to issue an additional 10 lakh, or 1 million, new shares to the public through an FPO. When participating in these primary market offerings, whether it is an IPO or an FPO, you want to maximize your chances of actually receiving shares. Because these offerings are often highly oversubscribed, the allotment is usually conducted through a lottery system. Therefore, a common strategy is to apply using multiple accounts. By opening and utilizing DMAT accounts for different family members, you significantly increase the mathematical probability of getting shares allotted to at least one of those accounts. That covers the essential mechanics of the primary market, where new shares are created and sold to investors for the very first time. To summarize our key takeaways, FPOs allow already listed companies to raise additional capital for growth, and applying through multiple family accounts can strategically boost your allotment odds. Once these shares are allotted and listed, the primary market phase ends. In our next session, we will transition into the secondary market, where these existing shares are actively bought and sold among investors.